Hey, this is Capt.Logun from the Keelhauled podcast, and you're listening to the Download Weekly Gaming News.
Robots Radio presents
Rated M for mature.
Welcome, everybody, to the Download Weekly Gaming News. I was actually not prepared. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't move my mic. We're off to a strong start, but we are joined. We are joined today by Capt.Logun from the Keelhauled podcast. Welcome, Logan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? I was going for Viking, but that was not Viking. So,
I have an ale horn somewhere that I can go and dig up if I really need to.
He says somewhere, like I didn't gift him that.
Okay, it's sitting like right there. I can slide over and get it. Anyway, so we are here today talking Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I cut you off there. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to tell Bree to give you a break because you're not even ready for the podcast. How could you be possibly ready to grab your ale horn at a moment's notice?
I know.
On our Viking podcast episode.
I told you, little brain cells I have today. I can't impede any of them.
How do we both have mead and this guy doesn't? What's going on here?
I don't know.
God,
let me just take a nice swig of this.
I know, right?
I feel okay.
That was good.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. Okay,
tasty.
Yeah.
So we're here talking Assassin's Creed Valhalla and making fun of me, obviously. So the game's been out a couple days now. I finally got it to work. It was quite a mess. So I was telling Capt.Logun a little bit about it, and Brenna was obviously there for most of it. But for you, the listeners, I'm playing on PC. Capt.Logun's playing on Xbox Series X, which awesome. And Brenna is playing on PS4. So we're covering almost the entire gambit here. And so I got it through Ubisoft Connect. We ordered collector's editions, so they came on Monday. Already had the game preloaded because it's digital. And so I was, 9:01 when it unlocks Eastern time, ready to go. Comes around, I hit play, nothing happens. Pops up, sits on the little rune screen on PC for ever. And I'm like, great. Odyssey did the exact same thing. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, when I first got it, I ended up returning it after messaging Ubisoft support for a week, trying all their fixes to get it to work. Never worked. Eventually, a year later, I got it with all the DLC, and it worked just fine. But after many hours of troubleshooting, reinstalling so many different softwares, reinstalling Assassin's Creed 3 times, I finally got it to work. And the golden fix seemed to be that it had to be on the same drive as my Windows. Because I always install on a different drive because my Windows is like a 256 SSD. So it's like the core stuff that I need. Everything else goes on the 1 terabytes. And for whatever reason, that was the ticket. And so it's been running just fine now. But yeah, it's good. So we're going to try and keep spoilers to a minimum, obviously, because we don't want to ruin anything we might have experienced for you guys. But so far, reviews generally good about the game. Critics give it an 8.1 out of 10, pretty dang solid, and users 7.1 out of 10. Not too shabby for a start. So
how would you guys rate it?
Well, let's give our thoughts and then maybe let's do a rating at the end.
This guy, okay.
Yep.
Unless you both are ready to give ratings, then we can just dive on into that.
No. Whatever makes you happy. You've had the hardest time out of all of us.
This is true. Let's not disturb him.
All right. It's going to be the picking on Jameson show. I see. Well, my thoughts initially, since I haven't heard my voice enough yet. I like it a lot. It's even from the start. So you start the main locations so far are England, Norway, without any spoilers. That's just from the obvious. We know from future DLC, we're going to be able to go to Ireland and we're going to be able to go to France, specifically the Paris area. So we're covering already some of the major stuff in Norse history. And so you start Norway, and Norway is just absolutely beautiful. And the game really pushes you down the story to like get things moving, but there's just so much to do there. And I kind of did a little mix of both, but I really like the way they've kind of done everything. It looks super clean. Uh, it looks it looks and feels like Viking. I don't feel like this is like, oh, an Assassin's Creed game reskinned as like an RPG. This definitely has a lot more of those RPG mechanics that I was looking for. They've cleaned up some of the stuff from the previous games. The one thing I will say that's a little weird is the dual wielding was a big thing that they kind of put emphasis on in this one, and it's a little clunky, and the combat can be a little clunky sometimes when you're fighting in those large groups during raids. But otherwise, I'm loving it. Drinking competitions, dice games, raids. Who doesn't love killing some Christians? I mean, you're literally just raiding abbeys constantly. That was a bit inflammatory, but it's the truth. So it feels like I'm playing Vikings, the TV show, the game, basically, with a sprinkle of Assassin's Creed. So I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's one of my favorite Assassin's Creeds in a long time.
So CaptLogun, you're up, sir. Yeah, you're the
Am I
guest.
up? Okay.
Yeah, you're the guest.
Just ladies first. That's I don't know.
She's
You
not
never know.
Jameson,
Yeah, I
and
was
then
gonna say.
you, and then I figured I'd go last. But no,
No,
okay. Well, I mean, overall, before I don't know if you guys want how much you want to dive into it, but overall, I'm enjoying the game. I think they've done a really good job giving you the atmosphere initially in Norway when you land, and you kind of start off the game kind of getting an introduction to your character, and it feels very very Viking. It feels like everyone has, they have their names, but they've also got their kind of known names as well. So everyone kind of calls you by your nickname a lot of the time. And I don't want to spoil that just because of how you get the nickname is kind of shocking. So I want to let people get that. But at first, I'm actually kind of curious to how far each of you are in the game so far without giving too much away.
Yeah, and we can get as nitty gritty as you want to. I was trying to keep it as broad as possible just to start, and then go from there. But for me, I am in England, but recently there, so I haven't done like I've got my settlement all started going, but I haven't started the main quest line. I've just kind of been running around collecting random stuff and just kind of surveying the little region that we're in. But other than that, I'm not too far. I spent most of my time in Norway to start, not as much time as Brenna did. And then, yeah, the one thing I will say, because it kind of cuts in there before, is I wish they would just drop the overarching real world storyline at this point, because since Assassin's Creed, what was it, 3, where we established the Isu and we lost Desmond, like it's gotten so convoluted. I can't even keep track of what's happening anymore in that. So it's like they pull you out and it's like, okay, can I go back already? Like I want to go do Viking things. But yeah, so just newly England. Brenna?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Norway just because I figured we wouldn't be going back for a while. So I wanted to get as many of the Assassin's Creed things, the armor, the weapons, and the little gadgets and things like that, and then make my way over. And then eventually it was Jamie was telling me that he's already in England and you get to pick your settlement finally. And I said, screw it, I'm going. I want to see the settlement. So I left and I'm in England and I did I picked one of the routes. You get an option to go one way or the other. You're gonna have to do both eventually. Um, but I picked the more offshoot one, so now I'm raiding things and claiming areas and helping people out, making friends. So, yeah, it
Very
is.
cool.
It's a lot of fun. It's like it's very peaceful. I love the photo system. I've actually been having a decent, time with that, especially in certain areas. It's kind of in the back of your head all the time. It's like, wow, this would be a really cool photo, and just to see everyone else's around there. But you know, amid all the beautiful sound effects, because the running through snow is like so pleasing. It's like walking on leaves. That crunch that just it feels so good. Um, it's like surprisingly violent, just out of nowhere. Just randomly, I'll be playing and you always see blood, and then there'll just be one kill scene. It's just you just rip a whole head off, or you have to. I'm like, whoa, where did that even come from?
I've seen a couple arms go at certain points. Like they definitely am living up to the M rating. This one for sure.
Yeah, it feels. I mean, it feels like Assassin's Creed to me. It's been a while since I have played an Assassin's Creed game, and as soon as I started playing it, I was like, oh yeah, this is Assassin's Creed. So it still is the series and everything that I remember. And the last thing I loved playing was obviously Ezio and that whole trilogy. So I'm
That's
happy with it as
interesting.
well.
You guys brought up an interesting thing about the rated M rating and stuff, because I thought it was really surprising when you get kicked into the game and not too far in, it starts giving you the options like, hey, do you want this gore? If you don't, you don't have to. You can go and actually turn off a lot of that stuff in the menus too. So I was actually kind of surprised, given the nature of the theme or like the setting, that they were actually going to have a mode in there where they're like, hey, if you don't want this to be super gory, you don't have to have it be super gory. So I was kind of surprised by that. I feel like we kind of misstepped right off the bat though, and Jameson, I don't want to call you out on this, but I'm actually really curious. What did you guys choose as far as male, female, or letting the animus decide?
I started with letting the animus decide, and I mean, female Ivor is just so freaking cool.
I know.
And
The statues.
when I have this on my desk, how
Mhm.
can I not, pick? And so I did let the animus choose, and it defaulted to the female at first. And so I was letting it run, and I was like, I really like it. But I ended up switching to male, and I've stuck with male pretty much since then, and I've been really enjoying that. But I'll probably end up flip flopping, honestly. Um, yeah.
Brennan?
I picked the female Ivor just because I thought. I mean, I got this and it was cool, and in general, and I've been liking it a lot. I have like a serious crush. They made they made her look so good, like so badass the whole time. So and I mean, it's a PlayStation 4, but the graphics are pretty good, especially on my nicer monitor that I have plugged in. So um, yeah, it looks great, and they did a good job, I think, designing the characters,
Yeah.
especially making Ivor not like the typical RPG type of character. They are Viking. Like there really isn't much of a difference, I think, between the male and female, except for like some of the looks. Because I think
Yeah.
they said that the dialogue is exactly the same, so there is
Yeah.
no difference.
There is no difference, and you could swap it literally at any time. Like after I did the whole first mission, before you could change it. So I did the whole beginning as female Ivor, most of Norway, and then eventually I flopped to male, and I ended up sticking with the male mostly because I got some sweet tattoos all set up. And so I started doing raids, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go full berserker. So I hide all my clothes on the raids except for my pants and my boots. So it's shirtless, all tatted, like, just blood crazed. So I've been loving that. What about you?
So I started off as female Ivor because I love the Shield Maiden concept. It's such a cool aspect of the history, and really, she looks really good. And the more and more I keep hearing from outside sources, the more and more people keep wanting to push people towards the male Ivor, which is kind of the swap of Odyssey with Cassandra and stuff. So I got to England and ended up swapping to male Ivor for a while, and honestly, I don't see the disdain that people are running into with the female Ivor. Her voice lines are delivered at about the same cadence and the same tone as male to me. In fact, if anything, the male Ivor is a little disappointing. Just looking at him, I expected a little deeper of a voice, especially coming from me, who I just naturally have a deeper voice. So I kind of expect that when I'm playing a male character, which is why I generally try to go female, because it's something I can't relate to. So I'd rather experience that. And after letting the animus decide a couple times and it just pushing me back to the female, I ended up going back to the female Ivor, just because I think she's a lot more attractive. I think she's much more interesting of a character. And in my head canon, there's actually a bit of a interesting kind of tension between the main dude, the Jarl that you go with, the Jarl's son in the main. I can't remember his name, but
Sigurd.
Yeah.
Sigurd. Thank you. I knew it was something like that, but I kept wanting to say Siegfried, and I'm like, that is not it. So
Soul Calibur.
Yes.
Very close though, very similar.
So between Seeger and his wife and Ivor, the three, with Ivor being female, I feel like there's like a little bit of a tension between the friendship that Sigurd and Ivor have, being that they're step siblings, and Sigurd's wife kind of wanting a bit of that. Like, so for me, I actually like the story a little bit better with that kind of a headcanon. And I don't know if people are kind of looking at that approach because there's such a good bond between the two of them, and you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna be together forever. And then I'm like, oh yeah, he's married. I forgot about that. That's weird. So
That's actually a great thing to mention. Like, playing as male Ivor, obviously, like it comes off to me like they're like the best of bros. Like, they're always clapping each other. Like, they did a very good job at making it fit really no matter what. And there was something else I was going to mention in there. Can't remember what it was, but the deeper voice, for sure. His voice was way too high for what I imagine, because past decade, one of my favorite shows was the Vikings TV show before it got a little convoluted. But when I looked at this game and I'm like, male Ivor, female Ivor, I'm like, oh, this is like a Lagatha and a Ragnar in my mind. Like, that's kind of the way I looked at it. Shield Maidens, so badass, such a interesting culture.
She definitely had a deeper voice than I thought that she was going to have, and it still surprises me in some moments when she's speaking. Like, whoa, it's like so gravelly. So I do enjoy listening to her. I don't know. I think it's enjoyable, and I mean, most studies show that generally female voices aren't that pleasing. Just deeper voices in general are more pleasing, unless it's like customer service, but that's a whole different thing. But I do find myself creating or imagining sort of lines or different areas that she is going to be going into just because of the connection. I don't know. I'm in the same thing as you, where I'm like making up things in my head, even though I know that's not what's written for the character. You can just kind of, your mind wanders. So I don't know that you get the same feeling with male Ivor, because it's just kind of like a bro situation everywhere he goes.
Yeah. I might give the female, might swap it here for a little bit and see how I feel about it. Another thing I was going to mention too was, raiding in England. You can't kill civilians. Found that one out. That was a little disappointing.
You can.
Well, it's a desync menu. Yes. Really enjoying. Go ahead.
You got to be selective about it. You got to be like, all right, you're going to die, and then I'm coming for you, but in like 10 minutes, okay? Then it's your time.
You got a clock. That's ominous. 10 minutes. You and me.
Wait.
I'm gonna go burn down your church and I'll be back for you. I love the integration with the Norse mythology. That was pretty obvious that they were going to do that kind of after Odyssey, but I'm really liking how far they're going with it already, which I think is super cool. Without trying to spoil anything again.
Yeah, it almost seems, because I don't know if you guys ever played God of War, the newest God of War. It reminds me a lot of that. So yeah, I know it's a fantastic game. If you guys haven't played it, go and play it. It's really good and it's beautiful. But this game definitely reminds me of like an Assassin's Creed mashup with God of War, and I really hope they go all in on the Norse and all the crazy stuff, because they did in the previous or no, not Origins. Why did I do that every time?
Odyssey.
Odyssey. It's because it's the same O. And they did it in Odyssey. They went pretty deep into Atlantis and things like that. So I really hope that they do that with this as well.
I know pre-release they had mentioned that they do go pretty far into the lore. Like I heard discussions of potentially visiting Asgard at some point during the game. My guess is you probably have some sort of, premonition. It's nice to see that they're already integrating drugs in with the storyline too, because if you didn't know about Norse mythology, they were very big on mushrooms and other hallucinogenics, either to communicate with the gods, to, honor the gods, or for berserkers, there was a special kind of mushroom that they always ate, and that kind of sent them into this rage. So, it's nice that they're just sprinkling in these little touches everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
interesting because you can ingest mushrooms in game, which kind of give you a boost, which is interesting.
Yeah. I'm really curious. I mean, I don't want to stretch it too far, but Jamie said I'll let you go on with the show. But yeah, I think it was really interesting the choices that they made with some of the ways that are kind of the game mechanics, but the game mechanics themselves feel very natural. Like you kind of go about the world, and as you're kind of collecting stuff, you start paying attention to what the actual things are and what they do, and they don't really push you to do it either. They don't really like, hey, make sure you go check out that shrub of berries because that's how you're going to regain your health. It's like, no, they just like, you go over there, you grab it, and oh, hey, I feel a little bit better, maybe I should
Yeah.
probably pay a little attention to that. And it's really, really immersive just how they've tried to. I don't know about you, but I've caught myself RP walking through most of the game in towns and stuff, because a lot of the story dialogue is done where you're kind of following someone, and they're walking at a slow pace and you can't run ahead of them really. You kind of keep track regardless of how far forward you're pressing on a controller. And because of that, I've caught myself just kind of like slowly pacing through the village, taking my time, looking at things, talking to people, and it's really added a really nice element to the feel of the game as you kind of like go from place to place. But I'm curious if you've done that at all.
Yeah, a couple times actually. And I've liked that they've added more, like the people in the town have more dialogue. They're talking a little bit more. Um, it definitely feels more like um it atmosphere that it's creating. But yeah, I like.
I mean,
Go ahead. Sorry.
you said something that kind of, it made me think too, the simplicity. So you do get a lot of missions, there is a lot of things to do, but the way that they the way that they have it set up, it doesn't bombard me in some ways that RPGs do, where you just have a million quest lines and I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I don't even know who I talk to. It's a useless quest. I don't even know why it's there. And I don't feel this right now. That might change, obviously, the deeper we get into it. But I feel like the organization of all the quests and just the way everything is kind of spread out around the world, it's not in your face all the time, at least in the menus. So it makes everything seem not overwhelming, and I want to continue doing things.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And I don't know what settings you guys set your game up on, but when I started, I went for the exploration mode, so the limited HUD, limited mini, compass. So it's really only kind of pointing me out like very major things that are very close to me. Otherwise, it's kind of just me wandering on my own, using my raven. I can't remember the raven's name. Sinu, I think it is.
Something like
Uh,
that.
and I went for the a little bit harder combat. So it takes usually like 2 to 3 hits for me to go down. So I tend to have to be a lot more mobile and a lot more thoughtful into how I approach fights or how I encounter enemies. And another thing too, right off the bat, is I've a wide variety of enemy types already. And they all have their own little unique quirks and things. I'm still trying to figure out the whole kind of like armor stun thing, but yeah, I'm loving all that. Random quest too. When you were talking about just kind of experiencing the world, I was through the main town before I left. I was walking through the towns and I guess saw like person was like, they have a little icon for like I think it's the world event one, but you interact with someone. And so I'm walking by this house and there's this woman standing out front, like pacing. And, I can see that I can talk to her. So I go over and she starts telling me how she has these problems with her husband in the bedroom and they haven't had sex in forever. And I'm like, what did I just rope myself into here? So like she's like telling me her problems and like Ivor. That's the other thing. In the game they say Ivor, but I've always heard it pronounced Ivor. That's kind of been throwing me off a little bit too. But yeah, so she just keeps talking and talking and talking. And at some point, Ivor volunteers to help them have sex. Yeah, and I'm like, what is about to happen? And so she invites me into her house, and I'm like, oh God, like is this threesome about to go down or something? Like what's gonna happen here? And so they're like, oh, we can only really do it like we've only really been able to do it when we're on raids in like the midst of battle. And I'm like, all right, okay, we'll see where this goes. And they're like, so can you start breaking stuff in our house? And I'm like, sure. So I started like smashing pots and stuff in the house, and they're making noises and saying things. And the guy's like, I'm starting to get pretty hard. And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And then just when I thought it couldn't get enough, they're like, can you light our house on fire? And that's really gonna send it over the edge. And I'm just like, if it means I'm done with this. And I literally just dropped a torch in the house and set it on fire, and they finished their business. I was just, wow, this game.
I would have set the controller down for a little while.
That was an interesting one. I wasn't sure what was going to happen with that one. Did you guys find the old man on the cliff though?
Yes.
No.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I like that one. That one was in Norway, and yeah, that was.
I
That was a
texted
really...
you about this, Jamie, and I got really excited, and then I got mad because it was just a dark cutscene. It just like
Gotcha.
faded in and out of black, and I was like, all right, well.
Gotcha. I encountered one. It was some little boys playing, but something weird happened, and I couldn't complete it. Like something like someone came along or something, and it like interrupted the process, and so like the boys disappeared, and I kind of just lost what I was supposed to do, so I kind of carried on. But
is that a
yeah,
good one to do?
That is a good one to do, because that's the one that that's the one that kind of clues you in a little bit on some of the because there's I don't want to get too deep into it, because there's an overarching story that's going on with just Norway itself and the clans that are out there, and that quest pertains to that overarching story.
I know.
Not in a direct way, but in an indirect way that kind of gives color to some of the background on what's going on. It's one of those situations where it's like it's a horror movie situation where the audience is let in on something that the main character doesn't know, and you're just sitting there waiting like with bated breath trying to figure out what's going to happen when this person realizes or what you know. And that's kind of what's going on with that quest. Like that quest has a surprise ending to it that clues you into something that you're just like, oh, well, this changes my opinion on everything. This is clearly like kids are honest. Kids are brutally honest. So you learn some stuff in that quest, and that's a shame that you missed out on it, because that totally changes an engagement, or it changed my perspective on an engagement that happens not too far after that. That I'm like, well, I don't feel good about any of the things that are going on right now.
Yeah, I've been pretty skeptical the whole time. Again, mostly because of, just my knowledge of Viking history is that the clans all very rarely get along, and they're usually part of always this tentative alliance with a king. But at any given point, one of the jarls will decide like, I don't want this guy as king anymore. And there's always all sorts of politics, but yeah, they definitely front load you with a lot of info about the story, but then it's kind of like, you gotta play it out, see what happens.
I was just saying, how do you guys feel about yeah, Ivor, Ivor, whatever the heck? How do you feel about their personality? Period. At least like towards the family and everything. When you first kind of get there, it was very intense for me. At least the mindset that your character has.
I felt the whole beginning to the story was really, really contrived. It was really hard for me to look past the obvious kind of plot devices that they were pushing on me to make me feel a specific way about a thing. Like I was like, really? You're gonna with a kid, and that's gonna, of course that's gonna happen. Of course that's gonna happen. And then later on, you're like, oh well, now your character is part of this, and of course they have this huge kind of overarching like story driving thing that's like, well, yeah, of course they're going to go do that. Did you see what happened in the first part of the thing? And it's like it just felt, it was like, of course that's going to happen. Of all the things that could possibly happen to get this story going, you're going to do the one thing that is going to push you to obviously make choices that there's you can't escape it. Like
Yeah,
your
it did
character's fate
feel.
has already been decided.
It felt a little rushed in general because obviously your character has developed these feelings over years.
Did
Oh,
we lose her?
I think we lost her for a moment. It happens sometimes.
It was
I
a really
will.
important comment too.
I know. I'll tack on while we're waiting for her. It definitely seems like they're getting the RPG elements in the game, but I think they just need to invest more in their narratives. That yeah, like you said, it's very contrived, it's very forced. Uh, there's limited options when it comes to like when you finally get a chance to pick an option of what you want to say, and it all kind of seems to still kind of head the same direction. So it
Yeah.
definitely seems like they could invest more in their narrative and their writing, as well as just some of their animations too. But you know, overall, I
Yeah.
think it's pretty good.
That was definitely one of the things that I felt like when I first started playing the game. In the first hour, it definitely felt like a choose your own adventure book. It's like you get the idea of like this book that has all these opportunities to change how the outcome's going to be, but at the end of the day you're going to end up at the end of the book, and it's like it doesn't matter what route you took to get to the end of the book, you're still going to get to the end of the book. It just gives you different options as you're going along. So I appreciated that they had a way for you to see what was going to happen. I kind of wish that maybe it wasn't so aggro at the beginning. You feel like there's just a little too much angst with your character when you're getting there, and you haven't had that time to build that up when you first jump into the game, and they expect the first little scene before you quote unquote grow up to be enough to drive that attitude that you're living with.
And it seems like ever since like the first, not the first Assassin's Creed, the second Assassin's Creed, they've really cut it short on like developing the character. It's like, here's this one thing, they become an assassin, and then it's like, okay, this is all their time as assassin. Where if you look at like the Ezio storyline, like there was like a good chunk of time where you played along and they what's the word? They built and they grew Ezio's character. Like he just, he didn't dive into it. They gave him, emotions, feelings. At first this was kind of just like a thing to do. And yeah, they don't seem to like, they seem to like backfill your character as you're going forward rather than letting you fill it in a little bit more to start. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's true. You're given a character for like a D&D campaign that you didn't get to choose. It's just a pre-made character, and then as you're then it's up to you to make the choices and decisions like with that character for the campaign that the dungeon master has already set up for you. Which, if you think about how Assassin's Creed is set, the character is already the character. This is just you as a person in the future exploring it through the animus. It kind of makes sense that a lot of the stuff that is already set in stone is kind of glossed over, because that's not the intent of what your character, who's the actual person playing the memories of that character back in the past, really cares about. They don't care what Ivor's like life was like. They're trying to find the end result of whatever it is that they need to get to save whatever's going on in the real world. So you can kind of explain it away that way, I guess.
Yeah, and that's where I think they really should just dump the modern storyline at this point. Like they've done so much to establish this kind of centuries long struggle between Templars, assassins, good, evil, light, dark. Like that can just be the game now. Like you can just be in this setting playing that. We don't have to be some person in the present or near present, playing, or, doing the weird thing the Animus does. So yeah, I think if they remove that overall narrative and then they just allow us to experience and develop these characters, I think we'll see a much better version of Assassin's Creed in the future, a better RPG, because that seems the direction they're headed now.
I'm curious, while we wait for Bree to get back, how without getting out into too many spoilers, obviously this being an Assassin's Creed game, that you're going to run into the Brotherhood at one point. You have, by the time you get to where we are in the game. I'm curious how you felt about their introduction to the plot line and their kind of involvement with the story.
Yeah. Without spoiling it, that's tough. Definitely didn't expect them to show up when they did. Their reasons for showing up, I was like, all right, it's just like just thrown in here like a little like bonus. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And like the reasons for them being there, I was like, that doesn't make any sense either. Like these people, yes, they, Vikings interact with the whole world, but I didn't see how they set it up. I expected it to be later. I expected it, to be after, when you make some moves. So yeah. I was a little surprised at how quickly it showed up. And yeah, It
I was actually kind of it was interesting the way that the story kind of sets it in place, or the way the game presents it is much different than I think is actually going on. I think that the plot line that's going on is geared towards the Brotherhood being a lot more um playing 3D chess compared to Sigurd, and just like the natural goal of what's going on with the Vikings. Like the Vikings, their goal right now is so simplistic compared to what's going on with the Brotherhood, that watching them come in to the plot line and to do the things that they end up doing before you end up going to England, I was really like, they are the puppet masters going on in this right now, from what I can tell. I could be proven wrong because I haven't played through all of it, but it was really surprising to see just how much of what they were doing, like they were pretty much okay with everything. And I was like, really? You guys are okay with everything? And they're like, yeah, we're good with everything. I'm like, okay.
it was a different change of pace, because you're used to seeing the Templars as with these hidden agendas, and they're kind of holding back info. But now it's the other foot. You're playing as someone who's kind of outside of the order, and then here's the order kind of with, they have their own agenda. They don't disclose anything they don't need to tell you. And at even certain points, they like almost object to things that conflict with their agenda, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, no, we'll see how this plays out. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a different look. And if I remember correctly, I think this is 200 or 300 years before the first Assassin's Creed.
Interesting.
I think
I wouldn't
because
know.
they haven't formed the Brotherhood yet. And that was my other thing that was a little shocking, was as I was surprised about how widespread, how they were going to work it out, and them showing up when they did. I was like, man, that's a long like reach. They kind of explained how they showed up, but I was like, at this point, like the hidden ones are still kind of a very like pretty shadowy. Like they don't have an official like headquarters yet, and it isn't until you get closer to the Crusades in the first Assassin's Creed that they become the Brotherhood, and they become what we actually know as the Assassin's Order. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested
Yeah.
to see where that heads. Her whole internet went down, by the
Oh,
way.
really?
Like
Oh,
she's
man.
doing full PC and router restart right now. So
That's brutal.
I don't want to move ahead, but it's like almost like we can't not. So I don't know.
We'll give her plenty of time at the end if she makes it back, because yeah, I'm curious to hear her thoughts. Overall, I will say that if folks are looking for the better version of Odyssey, I think this is going to weigh heavily on whether or not people are enamored with the thought of a Viking raid. If you love Vikings, this is probably as close as you're going to get to like what a full RPG for like God of War is going to be. And as far as like Ubisoft and the quality of the game, I would say that this is pretty on par with what most people are saying. This is not a perfect game by any means, but it's a good enough game to justify the cost for me, for sure.
I agree. And I see plenty of opportunities, and just with some of their past games, on how they've improved the game after it released, how they continue to improve it and fix things and add additional stuff. So, we're starting off on a much higher bar than Odyssey did. So that only to me says we have better things coming soon. Yeah, like there's all sorts of little weird, quirky things. There's, that I'd like to see better, but it is starting off at a very strong point. And for there being really no Viking games out there, especially indie that are like an RPG. This is definitely a good one. So I don't know. What would you out of 10? What would you give it right now? What you've experienced so far, not having finished the game, obviously.
Um, are we doing points or just whole numbers? Is it
You can do points.
okay? I would probably give it like an 8.7 out of this. The things that I think hurt the game are some of the kind of weird jank that comes with just like summoning your horse, or like I ran into a lady and she was supposed to be plucking a dead chicken. The chicken was rigid. It was like legs straight out, arms like to the side, head straight up. Like it looked like she was holding a doll. And it was so strange. But the game has so many net gains. Like the atmosphere, the music is amazing. The casual conversations that you come across, the audio is really good. The combat feels great as you're kind of going around and you're just kind of swinging your axes, you're swinging your flails. The dealing with other people as far as like heavy attacks or like deadly attacks, things like that, those are still kind of hit and miss. But I want to chalk that up to the fact that I'm not comfortable with the actual control scheme, because it's still kind of getting close to the point where I'm comfortable with it, but I'm not used to hitting X to dodge, or interacting with Y, or using my light and heavy with my shoulder and right triggers, and then having like block and gosh, I can't even remember what the other one is. Bow. The bow and arrow feel weird, but I appreciate the fact that um, they've given you a deep talent system that you can reset at any time. You can upgrade your gear. You can throw ruins into it. You can improve the stats alone. The trappings are there if you want to really invest a lot of time into this game. And that's something that I think I actually messed up on, because I think one of the articles that you wanted to touch on was about not wanting to rush into the story. And I feel like I did that, not knowing
Yep.
that I should have stuck around in Norway longer. I feel like I really missed out because there was a lot of Norway to explore, but I ended up falling into that storyline, that main storyline trap. So
Yeah.
that would be the one thing is that I wish it gave you a little more, a little less sense of urgency with certain things in the beginning, and let you feel open to explore the way you do once you get to England.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of those thoughts. And yeah, I fell into the same kind of trap, but one thing that kind of helped me to kind of move on and fall into that storyline in Norway was when I was exploring certain parts and it was telling me I couldn't go here yet. Like, and it was like the yet, like this area not available. Um at your current point. So I was like, okay, so something tells me we're probably going to be coming back here later. And then just with the story that's going on in Norway, there's a lot of unresolved stuff. So I felt okay not investing as much time as I did, but I still wish I had invested more. Me personally, I'm gonna go with an even 8 out of 10. Uh, and it's for a lot of the same reasons you did. I'm still kind of exploring and figuring out. The control scheme is a little weird. It's taking some figuring out. The the dual wield system, the both hands, is very clunky. Like I tried to do the two axe. I did a flail and an axe, and it was very odd that like if I tapped my axe, which was my offhand, I would block. But then if I wanted to attack, I just had to sit there and hold that button. And then he would do just this weird little chop thing. And I was like, this is very underwhelming. And I know they've been able to make stuff like that work in the past. So I'm a little disappointed to see how that plays out. But otherwise, most of my issues are not really issues with the game itself. It's issues with Ubisoft. You know, they need a higher quality engine. Uh, for the exact same things that you said, that they're animations are a little clunky, things are a little stiff, they don't move very naturally. And while everyone is kind of pushing towards a lot of this, motion capture technology with a lot of their games, and I get that that's very expensive to do, just getting a little bit of motion capture here and there would work so much better for this game. Um, you could spend a whole day and all you really need is like a male actor and a female actor, and you could run them through just a few, poses and movements, and that would just bring so much more life to the people as you walk through the towns, or even during some of the cutscenes, when like the animations don't quite mesh up because, it's animations and it's very hard to make it look that natural. Um, my other big gripe was just, yeah, the whole animus thing bothers me, and then the narrative, which I already kind of touched on. Um, so I would like to see all that kind of addressed. And it looks like Brenna might be back here,
Possibly.
possibly. So yeah, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. I think for the game to get better, I think it's a great game. Uh, would I give it Game of the Year? Absolutely not. But I think if Ubisoft focuses on the RPG mechanics and they invest the time and the resources on their engine, their animations, and their narrative, I think the future games will benefit a lot from that. Just to catch you up, Brenna, welcome back. I can see the anger on your face. We talked about some of our likes and dislikes about the game, and so we're just giving our final thoughts and our score out of 10. You can use points, so you can do like 7.5. So
I guess I haven't heard your guys's. Okay, I'm gonna go a little weird and say I don't know why 8.2 stuck out of my head, but for some reason it did.
I see. This is why we're friends. I was thinking 8.2 the whole time I was listening to Logan talk, and he gave it an 8.7. And I was like 8.2, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna just knock it down to 8. So continue. 8.2, good score.
Yeah, I think it's better than a good game. But then again, it's very early, so it might get bumped up if they do the Norse myth, Norse storytelling and everything to do with it. I think I might bump it up a little bit. I just kind of need that wow factor. I'm hoping that it doesn't just stay, you doing raids, unlocking this, go to a new area, do a raid. You know what I mean? I really hope that they do more with the game than just you unlock territories. So that's my fear. Tentative 8.2 could go higher. I don't know that it could go lower. It's good. The mechanics are simple. The skill tree, I actually do like the skill tree because it forces you, the intermediaries between, they give you bumps. And then once you finally get obviously enough to get like the main ability, that's really nice because I don't know that voluntarily I would choose some of the things that I do, but obviously they have it set up to where your character is getting evolved all the way through, and it's not really when I'm choosing things, I don't really look at the secondary stuff. I look at the main thing where it's like, if someone falls down, I stomp on their head. I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool. So I'll make my way to that tree, and I don't really care what I get on the way there because I just know it's improving my character. So I really do like the idea that they pushed with the tree like that.
I'm kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts. One of the things that I wonder how the game would be if a lot of the skill tree that is mostly obscured by fog, because it's designed like a constellation system akin to Skyrim in that essence, but it's more of a branching path as opposed to picking one specific talent and then going up that path and then going over to a different talent, going up that path. You start in the center and you get 3 choices, and one's a stealth, one's a ranged, and one's a melee. And you kind of have to work out which one's which as you kind of like slowly unlock a lot of the different paths. So at first I started to catch myself really kind of going evenly along all of them. And then eventually I reset it all and went heavy into melee. And I kind of wish that I could see everything, because then it would give me a better idea of being able to plan out, like, okay, well, I see this really cool thing at the end of the melee tree that I want to get to, and now I just have to figure out how I get there, through what paths. But I can see myself resetting a few times as I either come across different moves or I get tired of playing the way that I am. But also, like, I'm still running into uh, trouble with the gear, like finding the right gear for the right spec. So I don't know if that was something that I was kind of like, I'm gonna go this way. I don't have the right gear for it. I don't know when I get the gear for it, but I'll just figure that out later. But I'm curious how you guys feel about that overall.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would like to see more of the skill tree. I'm okay with them not showing me everything on the skill tree, unlike Skyrim, where you just kind of scrolled and you could see literally everything and like, oh, that's what this all does, and you could really plan it out. But like, just to at least be able to see, like, I don't know how big it is, and to be able to see maybe like 2 or 3 constellations away would be a huge help, because then it's like, I could see like, okay, range is going to do, range will give me, there's my first range option. But then to be able to see my next 2 after that, then that would give me at least more planning. And I could be like, okay, so range is going to kind of do this, melee is going to kind of do that. Maybe I'm going to go like partway into melee and then go more heavy into range, just a little bit more, rather than kind of, like you said, just kind of like fumbling around and seeing what shows up, and then resetting all your skills so you can, place it out. It's
I
a little weird.
I don't know how far you guys have branched out of your skill trees, but I've noticed that they actually, some of them interconnect. So the further you get away, there's multiple routes to an area. So I can kind of dodge my way around and go to this ability, and it might be a little bit quicker. So it's kind of interesting. It's more so like a spider web than
Uh-oh.
anything, with
Yeah.
like little points here and there. Like Jimmy said, it would.
Just turn off your video for a minute and just
It's
okay.
fine. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, it's like I said, it's like a spider web. And I would like to see just a little bit more of the map. Yeah. But it seems that there's multiple ways to get to an ability. And it seems like after that first 3, it kind of just moves around. Like there really isn't range only on this side, or melee only on this side. It seems that the abilities kind of start to get jumbled. So it is kind of like a maze trying to find
Yeah. I
things that
will
you
say
like.
too, the gear has been a little annoying, trying to find the kind of weapons I want, or kind of the gear I'm looking for. Um it would be nice, like, to be able to buy stuff. I've yet to like encounter the ability to like purchase weapons or gear, which it was a big thing back in the previous games. So maybe I just haven't found people yet to do that. But
You can buy it in the Animus.
yeah, I ain't spending Helix.
Yep.
No real
Yep.
money will be spent on this game. That's for sure.
Yep. They give you some.
They
They give you like
they do.
300
It
as a
gets you
teaser.
very, very little.
Except for all the tattoos. The tattoos are all like 350, or like no, I think the tattoos are 200, but there's something like all the settlement decorations are like 50 more, which is
You know
so
they do that on
annoying.
purpose, right? Because it's like, oh,
On
well, I
purpose.
can
Yeah.
rationalize this purchase of Helix because I'm so close already, and then it's a slippery slope from there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think as we get further into the game, we go into more regions. The politics start playing in. We start encountering more characters. We start encountering Templars. I think the game will really start to grow and become far more intricate at that point. How long it takes us to get there is another question, though.
If you guys could choose a studio to develop this game that
We,
wasn't
we should
Ubisoft.
definitely.
Oh no. I was talking over her the whole time and I didn't know.
She kind of froze there for a hot second. If we could choose a studio to develop this game, what studio would we pick? Is that where you were?
Yeah. Before I realized I was horribly talking over.
No, you really weren't. It was me just kind of screaming at my computer right now.
If it makes you feel any better, I was literally just before we started recording, I was having trouble with my internet, and I'm like, you better not do this to me right now. You could have messed with my internet anytime during the day, but not right now. And I felt like I scared it.
Good. Do you want to come and talk to mine? Because
Sure.
oh yeah, thank you.
So, question on the table: if any other studio could develop a Viking RPG, we'll remove the assassin portion of it. A Viking RPG. What studio would you have develop it? And that's a good question. I need to think for a second if anyone else has got an answer.
I think I have mine just because Cyberpunk is coming out, and I would love to see a CD Projekt Red do like a rated whatever, the highest rating that you can, which is what they're doing for Cyberpunk in a Viking style. Because the game already looks gorgeous, and hopefully the storyline is the thing that really sets it off. So, I mean, CD Projekt Red makes great games, and if they could pump it up and do it like they seem to be doing it for Cyberpunk, I think it would be a Viking game.
That's a good one. You brought that up. I was not headed that direction, but now I pretty firmly am. I was going to say Naughty Dog purely because of Last of Us, and I know they have the depth when it comes to their narrative, their story, the choices, and their creation of world. But there's so many other things that they're missing that I don't know that they would be able to bring to the table. Unlike, as you mentioned, CD Projekt Red, where we've seen them do Witcher. So we know they have strong melee combat mechanics that would fit within a Viking system. We know that they're able to do these darker and more, mature themes. We also know that they can do the supernatural. So I feel like, yeah, CD Projekt Red would be, and their games are incredibly pretty. They would do Vikings justice, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was going to go for
yours?
Cyberpunk. Sucker Punch has done an amazing job with Ghost of Tsushima, and they have all the trappings of a Ubisoft open world RPG, but it just feels really good with the combat. And if they can take the systems that they put in with Ghost and apply that to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I probably would feel more comfortable with how to play Valhalla right now than currently how I'm running into mental gaps where I think I should be hitting one button to dodge, and that is not the dodge button, and I just keep taking damage as a result.
Random developer here, but Crytek. Do you remember Rise: Son of Rome?
I remember that being a PS3 launch game, I think.
It was a Xbox One.
Oh, that's right.
Launch title, and it was a very small game. But it was developed on CryEngine. You were a Roman legionnaire, and you were fighting in Europe and parts of Rome. But the combat could definitely be overhauled. One thing one company I will always give absolute praise on their combat is From Software. Like the Dark Souls franchise, especially Dark Souls 3, their melee combat is just absolutely spectacular. And it's so simple. It's so incredibly simple. Uh, it's easy to figure out, but it's high skill making it work. And that's what I like. So Ubisoft, they need to innovate more is what I think it comes down to. The bottom line is that other studios are investing on new tech and trying new things like, Sucker Punch and whatnot. And I think from what I've heard about Ghost of Tsushima, I haven't played it myself. It sounds amazing. It looks amazing. I've been saying ever since they created Assassin's Creed, when are they going to set it in Japan? And
they did. It's just called Ghost of Tsushima.
You're not wrong. I think what Sucker Punch will do next, whether it's with Ghost of Tsushima or a similar style game, I think is really going to take the cake. So yeah. Anyone got any?
I mean, they do need to. I would say they do need to maybe try something new, because I mean, Ubisoft has kind of just had their staple games and not really done much else outside of that box. So, yeah, it's probably a good time for them to do that. I don't know that it would be received well if they try to do that in the middle of Assassin's Creed. I feel like it'd be too much of a change, and they should probably just start with a new series.
I think that'd be really tough, because the Assassin's Creed name has so much clout that it doesn't matter what this game could have been. They had to attach the Assassin's Creed to Valhalla to sell, or no one would have trusted it enough to pick it up off the shelf and say like, oh, Assassin's Creed. I know what Assassin's Creed is. I'll buy this game, knowing that it's just a Viking Assassin's Creed game. If they put any other name to it, I feel like they'd have to really prove like this was going to be an amazing game. And I don't think Ubisoft has the ability to let games be made at the rate that a Cyberpunk or a Naughty Dog or a Sucker Punch would give them, for them to be more than just like an 8 and actually be like a 9 or a 10 game.
Publicly traded studios, man, I'm telling you, once the studio goes public, that's the death of them. Activision Blizzard, EA, which includes BioWare, and then what's Cyberpunk. I mean, CD Projekt Red is the only publicly traded company that I know of that continues to take time to develop their games. Everyone else is just, it's the same formula over and over and over, crank them out, crank in that revenue. And it's all these, it's not, I don't want to say mid-tier, but that's what it feels like they are, is that they're like purposefully holding themselves back in order to focus on developing games, or they're partnering or getting bought out by a big company that will let that, and the big company can worry about like stockholders, stakeholders, funds, but then the smaller company can just focus on developing their titles. So, well, we've been talking for quite a while. Unfortunately, Brenna, you didn't get to talk as much, but one thing One thing I will note is the game has been received very well. Day one, it had double the player count of Odyssey. So it's already off to an incredibly strong start. Reviews are pretty dang good. And it does seem like they've addressed a lot of people's concerns from Odyssey. So the only thing I can say is it's going to get better. Just looking back at Odyssey and how much better it got with each DLC package. So I look forward to seeing what's coming and playing what's coming for Valhalla. Anyone else, any closing remarks?
Yeah, no, I guess mirroring things that you said. The game is beautiful. It's Assassin's Creed. It's reliable. You'll probably have fun playing it. Pick it up, don't. Either way, if you like it, that's also cool. I mean, I feel like it's kind of that game that it's like, I'm not going to die without it, but it's sure a lot of fun to play. And maybe the mythology gets so cool that it makes it like a favorite game of the year for me. Not game of the year, though.
This is definitely a game that if you were looking for something at the launch of the console gens to pick up to enjoy and have something to go into the holiday with, you're going to be able to do that with this game. There's enough meat on this bone to pick away at it little by little, especially with the settlement building aspect of it. That is really interesting to see how things kind of get built out. There's a drive for you to actually go out raiding, which I think is one of the best features to the story is that it's one thing to kind of make a settlement and build up your town and make choices like that, but it drives the fun part of the game, which is going out raiding villages, taking supplies, things like that, getting into engagements instead of having waypoints that are story or side content and just going to do those. Like if you want to do that, that's fine. You can mainline the story. It's great. But if you want to actually spend time and care about the town that you're building, then that's where you're probably going to have the most fun, picking out places to go raid, going out, killing a bunch of things, taking a bunch of treasure, not caring how things go, and then using that to actually reinforce the relationships that you make on your town as you get in there. Just whatever you do, except that for one, no game's going to be perfect, and if you give yourself to this game, you'll enjoy it a lot more than trying to min-max anything that you're doing in it.
Well said. Well said. Well, that was a nice solid discussion, I think. So we are going to call it there. This will be, if you've listened this far, we'll figure out that we'll be releasing this as kind of a separate thing from the rest of the episode just because of the time, but also just because there's so much to talk about this week with the launch of next-gen consoles. So with that, we will dive back into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Skull, everybody.
Skull.
Skull.
Ahoy there, ye landlubbers! Avast! My name is Capt.Logun, and I'll be your guide out on the Sea of Thieves. If you love the idea of stealing treasure, cutting down cursed skeletons, fighting off krakens, and raiding forts filled to the brim with shinies, then Sea of Thieves is the game for you. Join me each week as I dive into the news and bring back the nuggets of information that any sailor worth their weight in salt would desire. You don't have to be a pirate legend to gain access to my podcast. Just search for Keelhauled, a Sea of Thieves podcast in your podcast app of choice, or head over to robotsradio.net or CaptLogun.podbeam.com and get ready to set sail for adventure. Arr.
Since the dawn of time, there have been storytellers who teach through their stories. These myths give rise to fundamental truths, and these truths shape our collective experience. Yet these myths are not something of the past, and today they engage us more fully in the story itself. Video games allow us to live the lives of our favorite myths. My name is BlueCrew86, host of Focus Fire Chat, and I want to invite you to explore our modern-day myths with us. Join with us as we explore the stories, the mythologies of the Destiny franchise, as well as other games. Let's explore together.